if your personal brand is just something you're thinking about, I think it's just way easier to make a personal brand that's just authentic and genuine versus trying to become a person or become an authority.
Welcome, everyone, to the Making of a Nobody. I'm your host, Sejal Thacker, and we all know how fast-paced and competitive the startup world is. So having a strong personal brand is a major contributor, right? It's going to help to your startup succeed or fail, right? So today we're going to be talking about how founders can craft a personal brand that's resonates with who they are, but also aligns with the startup's mission so that they can attract investors, build credibility, and set themselves apart, right, from the crazy market that keeps getting flooded with more and more startups. And so whether you're just getting started on your startup journey or you're an established founder, I guarantee that you're going to leave with some actionable strategies to help you build and scale your personal brand. And so today I am excited to be here with two remarkable guests who bring years of experience in the startup world, and two fellow leaders at Nobody Studios, Mark McNally and Andy Walsh. Welcome back to the show. No, it's great to have you both here today, and this is a really important topic, right? And so let's just jump right in. And we've already got people joining us. Thank you, Neeraj, for joining us again. It's always great to see you here today. So I'll start off with Mark. I'll start off by asking you this question. In your experience, right, this is a really important one, is how can founders make sure that their personal brand isn't just some sort of marketing tool, but it's a real reflection of who they are and what they truly stand for?
I enter this being totally honest. I'm not a massive personal brand person. Like I understand the value of it, but I think that there's pros and cons. And we've been coached along the way multiple times for me to change my profile. We actually did it for like 6 months, and I hated it because they're like, you need to represent more of the studio and change your backdrops. But when you go to my profile on LinkedIn, it used to look like, well, it didn't used to, but like 6 months, it looked like an advertisement for Nobody Studios, and that's not who I am. Nobody Studios is my life. It's my main focus, but it's not who I am. I'm a father, I'm a parent, I'm a husband, I'm a pilot, I'm a ex-military person. Like there's a lot of other things that make me a diverse human being that might be worthy of your time to talk to or partner with, right? And so I've always felt really uncomfortable with the coaching that says your backdrop and LinkedIn, all your stuff should be an advertisement for what you're doing. I get that. And that might work if you're a, salesperson and that's your main focus in that part of your life, but that's not who I'm at. And that doesn't reflect where I'm at in my life. So I've gone backwards to show more lifestyle stuff and will continue to do that and sharing more about me as a human versus just me as CEO of Nobody Studios. So I feel very deeply passionate that depending on where you're at in your life, you need to, if your personal brand is just something you're thinking about, I think it's just way easier to make a personal brand that's just authentic and genuine versus trying to become a person or become an authority. I mean, personally, I'm kind of tired of people like that. So people who try to act like they're an authority of something, they feel like influencers. They feel very fake to me. I don't feel a connection to them, and I don't resonate with their content. So I'm not saying that doesn't you can't peddle it, and I'm not saying that there's not people who don't digest it. Of course they do, but that's not probably the kind of people that I'm looking to connect with either. So for me, I embraced transparency and genuineness and honesty, and that means you got to show your whole self, not just business self.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think what you just said really resonates with me too, Mark. I think that if founders can, clearly communicate why they do what they do, and I think like showing vulnerability and being passionate, I think that like draws people in on an emotional level, right? And when I think of some of the brands that stand out for me, that's what I think about is that human element, right? And so, Andy, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. What are some things that founders need to consider when they're creating their personal brand so that it's authentically aligned with, both their own values, but also the startup's values and missions as well?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think if we had this conversation as like a year ago, I think I would answer this question very differently. Because I resonate with what Mark was saying to a certain degree in the sense of like the desire to become LinkedIn famous for the sake of it is something that is like so disingenuous and doesn't add any value. But I think the reality now, though, too, is that with AI, there's so many platforms that you can use to be able to punch in an idea and it will give you everything you need from copy to graphics, the whole thing. So you have this like increase in content, and some of it is people representing themselves to be something that they're not. So for me, the thing that I see the opportunity, and I look at from a founder's perspective, one of the most important things as a founder is obviously creating a great business, but it's also your network. It's ability to be able to have people you can bring in who can do functional roles, who can be investors in your company, can be strategic partners. And if you think about your own personal choice, and I know this from my side, is that I'm more interested in people than companies. So if there's someone or a product that I'm interested in, I'm more likely to follow the founders than I would be to follow a LinkedIn profile of a company. Like LinkedIn profile of a company is typically selling something about what they do. And it's not to say that I don't follow them, but what I find more interesting are those anecdotes. And there's people that I find interesting. And like, I love the truth bombs that people drop around that. And I think the ability to be able to call something what it is and sort of, and poke fun in a constructive way at some of the people that are just filling the airwaves, so to speak, of stuff that doesn't add any value. So my advice for a founder would be is to use it as a way to help build your profile, but represent the one thing that you stand for. Don't try and be too complicated. It's like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what drives you? Because I think being known for that allows you to easily sync up with your company's mission and articulate and scale your story in a way that's very complementary to what your business stands for, because ultimately you are your business. So being able to do that creates a much longer runway for what you're doing. So where it drives value is if you're looking at fundraising, quite often within the VC world, people will know your company, will know you before you pitch them. Like that's your sort of objective. You want to be sort of startup famous to a point in the right circles. If you don't have a network, that's impossible to do that. So you want to be able to hit the ground running a little bit with what you're doing. So to put it into simple steps, I'd be focusing on the thing that you stand for, posting consistently. But I think more importantly, in the piece that gets lost, is actually find the people that inspire you and participate in their conversations, add comments, try and spark a debate, and try and create community, because it's not a broadcast platform. It should be a community where you participate and contribute to that as well. And I think that's where you find genuine relationships. And I take it back to a real example of personal stories of I go to a lot of events deliberately to meet people, and I love having those conversations. So I think for me, there's a role, but I don't think people should overinvest too much of their time in doing it. I think sort of share stories about yourself and make sure they're consistent.
I love all of that, and so, you both have talked a little bit about the importance of personal branding. And so I want to make this session a little bit interactive too. And I see that there's people signing up and joining us from all of the different platforms. And so I would love for you both to just take a quick moment and think about, how would you summarize your own personal brand in just one sentence, right? And share it with us. So for those of you that are watching, I see Neeraj is here and some other folks. I can't see the names. I just see, it just says LinkedIn. But if you could just share, drop yours in the comments. This is a great way to practice how you pitch yourself, right? To peers or investors or on LinkedIn. And so let's see those one sentence pitches roll in while we hear Mark and Andy's pitch, and we'll share some of these out live and offer feedback, right? So you can learn from Mark and Andy and get their feedback right as we kind of do this. So who wants to go first? Mark or Andy, can you each summarize your personal brand in just one sentence?
I strive to be genuine, and I do believe that the interaction you're looking to have has to have a yin and a yang, has to have a, what you're looking for has to be something what they're looking for. So what I'm looking for, if I share my honest, I'm struggling with this, or this is what I'm trying to solve right now, it's part therapy, and it's also knowing that the right community is going to engage and give back. If they're giving back, it's also because they want to engage in the journey and have a positive impact, right? So I just believe, for me at the core, and social media, we've got a team that puts out different things. It's not always me posting every damn thing that I put out, but when I write a comment, it's always you can tell it's very human. It's very me sharing, and I'm very open and very vulnerable. And I think that's super important.
You didn't really answer the question. You notice how he did that, Andy? He just went around it. I'll give you another minute to think about your one sentence pitch for your personal brand. Andy, what's yours?
Yeah, so I think Mark taught on some great values there that would inform your personal brand, which is critical in the process. I think for me, like the way that I think about myself is actively living in tomorrow, as far as a mindset, to be able to lean into things that nobody knows yet and find opportunities to do that. But I think off the back of it, it's very much centered in how does that create a culture that I want to be part of. So how are you creating culture by looking into the future and sort of helping define and craft that?
Yeah. And Mark, just going back to what you said, and I'm just giving you a hard time, obviously. I just meant like when I first met you, I remember, when I went and started looking before we got the marketing team posting, for Nobody Studios, when I went back and I looked at your brand, I mean, there were definitely some things that were constantly coming up.
That's what I'm saying. It was vulnerable.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't hear it, or I need to say it better, but
I didn't give you a lot of time.
I try to be genuine and vulnerable. That's my one sentence.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. And bold, right? That's what jumped out at me when I was looking at your stuff. Yeah. You were really bold in your goals. And so here we've got Christopher Shashadri joining us. And I'll just put up his comment here for both of you to read. And he said, Andy Walsh, words of wisdom. Glad I caught this on my feed. Might have to stick around for a few minutes. Thank you for joining us, Christopher. And then we do have a statement here, right? Here's a one sentence statement from Neeraj Singh. And he says, healing people and communities, right? That's obviously a really great mission. That's a really great mission, right? Any feedback on that for him, as far as from a branding perspective?
No, I think walking into it, I would know who I'm talking to. So if that's who he is and that's what he, his focus is on, then I think it's a great, starting point. I would walk into that conversation and know what we have in common.
Yeah, agree. It's one of the hardest things to do with writing is to be like intentional, but also be short and sharp and have someone understand you quickly. It's the art of crafting good copy. So I think it's great. I think even it touches on a human level, I'm guessing too. And I don't know Neeraj personally, but I feel like that combines personal and professional, which is also, I think, really important too if you're thinking about passion with what you do with your life.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know who gets the actual credit for it, but I think Lincoln gets the credit for it. But this whole concept of sorry for the long letter, I didn't have time to write a short one. Like it takes time to actually think about how to condense your words.
Yeah, and it truly does, because I went through the practice myself as I was kind of getting ready for this. And I think I started off with like one page, and then I had this big paragraph that I started with, and then I kept dwindling it down. And then I went and looked at what I'd written on LinkedIn a couple of years ago when I set that thing up. And here's kind of where I landed on it. And this really is just, I empower teams to foster civil, inclusive, positive. It's too wordy already, right? High-performing cultures so people can bring their best selves to work and crush their big, hairy, audacious goals. Way, way too long. And then I put in
2 or 3.
I know. And then I put in parentheses without losing their sanity along the way.
Sounds like 3 or 4 sentences. Yeah.
Way too hard. I know. Because, and again, it's also going to depend on who you're pitching to, right? So if you're pitching to an investor, it might be a little bit different than you're talking to somebody who's a peer in the industry.
I don't know. I agree with that.
No? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if you're force yourself to one sentence about who you are, Man, that shouldn't change. I don't care who you're talking to.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Yeah. And I think it's true, right? Like, I think if you want people to trust you, right, and find you to be credible, that authenticity becomes key, right? So, talk to us a little bit about, Andy. What are some advice you would give to founders? Because you've worked with a lot of different founders in a lot of different industries as well, about how they can establish credibility, especially when you're starting out.
It's easy and I think natural for people to feel like that they need to stretch who they are and their role in the world. And I equate it to, like, to give you a nice contextual example. And it's been a while since I've dated, but it's dating, right? Like, if you think about dating, like in the early days, you try and tell a story of the person you think that they're going to like, rather than who you are in a genuine fashion. And the inevitable happens where you get further down the path and all of a sudden that you relax into who you are and then you realize you don't get on. I think in the sense of owning who you are and thinking about it, being vulnerable and having something that you stand behind, like Mark said, being able to say, this is me, this is what I talk about, this is what I know, being honest about what you don't know and finding ways to learn and grow. And I think that is just an appealing quality in anyone, right? I think that I hate the expression fake it till you make it. I would love to set it on fire because it implies a level of deception. And it's kind of like admitting you don't know something is actually a superpower. I don't think it's a problem. You've got to be able to be, talk the talk and be charming on the fly. But I would say credibility comes by leaning into what you know and what you're passionate about and have a thirst for knowledge and to grow. Like I'd say going into my own personal values, curiosity is right up there. I would say that personally and professionally, I ask more questions than I talk, unless I'm doing a live stream, and then the tide flips the other way around. But I think for me, being curious is the best thing you can have, and being open about that. So I would say lean into yourself, be curious, and actively learn and try and grow.
I love that, Andy. Thank you. And, as I was kind of getting ready for this, I was thinking about like how personal branding is, a lot of times it's inspired by people we admire, right? Or the brands that resonate with us, right? And so can both of you maybe share an example of somebody famous or well-known whose personal brand sort of resonates with you or has influenced the way that you've built your own brand? Tell us who that person is and how they connected with your journey. We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'll start. So you, Sejal, I found you for a reason. No, I did. I remember the very first time I reached out to you was 2020. I was in my garage building Nobody Studios, and I had a broad vision of what we're trying to create. I knew culture was going to be one of the things I had to get right. It's like it's literally on my whiteboard in my garage still today. I haven't erased it, but getting culture right was something that was a circle. Like I was focusing on it, and your content, found itself into my feed, and I started watching you, and I started hearing you, and I started reading your comments, and I was just, I was attracted to the energy. I was attracted to this person thinks the way I think, and I just reached out, right? And we had a call, and I remember when we talked, I felt like butterflies actually, because I was so excited to talk to you. I was like so excited to talk to Sejal, who I've been watching her content, and we were live in real time, and I was able to tell you what I was doing, and you're able to respond and say, sounds interesting. And obviously we developed a relationship and, took multiple conversations, but that was a good example of like, I'm not looking for anything. I wasn't searching for you. It just kind of found itself into my feed. It resonated. I felt compelled to reach out. I didn't know what would happen when we talked, but the rest is, history. So.
Wow. Truly, truly humbled. Thank you for that, Mark. And right back at you, because like I've said this before, after our first conversation, I was like, who's Mark McNally and what's Nobody Studios? At first I was like, is Nobody Studios for real even? Like what is that name all about? And then I was really intrigued just by the name, right? And then I started reading your posts. And like I said, it was like a diary of who you were. And I prefer that, rather than the polished versions that are putting out there, because that's what I really connected with. Because our conversation during our first call was actually pretty short. We didn't have a long conversation, you know.
Yep.
And then it was afterwards when I was reading that, I was like, you know, he's really speaking from his heart and the lessons that he's learned and whatever I can do to contribute to that journey, right? And so thank you so much. That's really, really humbling. Andy, I would love to hear from you on this question as well.
Yeah, I've got an original one and then a very recent one as well, and for two very different reasons. So my first job out of university, I did a double degree in exercise science and marketing. I was basically doubling down on my bets as an 18-year-old. I had no idea what I wanted to be, and as probably most 18-year-olds have. And I think doing that allowed me to sort of open doors that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And my first CEO, his name was Garth Proud. I worked with him doing event marketing and operations for a triathlon cycling and running company. And it was small, but we'd put on like ITU triathlon events. So like the world's best competing in locations. And it was always like a lot of fun, but he was a leader that led by being in the trenches. Like he'd be doing the heavy lifting with us side by side, as well as hosting athletes, marquee sponsors, all these people. And he was a family person at heart, which resonated with me. And he instilled values about like work and life and things that I realized looking back have influenced my career in ways that were probably more profound than I thought at the time. And I think because I was so young, I was 22 coming out of university and, you know, very green on the corporate world. And I look back now, was like super influential. And then fast forward to today, I've been fortunate to sort of help two young founders out of London with a business called Amigas. Two females, one's from Scotland, the other one's from Brazil. And they both have this amazing background of like travel and inspiration. And they've created this business and they're so passionate and they love what they do. And it just reminds you when you're dealing with founders who see an opportunity, not just for what they're doing with their own careers, but to actually create community and create a business and add value to the world. I just respect that so much. And it's just not that I need a reminder about why I do what I do, but it's that hunger and passion and change that inspires me. And I think that like that's why I'm here today and why I'm part of Nobody. And, you know, and I'll throw one at the back there that Mark, I don't like to do it on this forum, but he deserves it. He's been amazing with me too in the last little while since I've been at Nobody. It's coming up to a year. His ability to read a lot of information quickly and give me, could be 30 seconds feedback, and it actually helps change direction on what I'm doing, and not just with a task, but actually big picture with me too. So it'd be remiss of me not to call out Mark, even though, you know, we have a bit of banter. I'd like to compliment the guy sometimes.
There's nothing wrong with mutual banter as long as it's appropriate, right? It's always fascinating to hear from, you know, industry veterans like the two of you, you know, about where you're finding your inspiration. So thank you for sharing that. And so, you know, we talked a lot about like what founders should keep in mind, but, you know, as a startup grows, the founder's brand has to sort of grow with it, right? And so this leads us to that next topic of scaling the personal brand as the startup evolves, right? So what are some of the pitfalls that founders face when they're trying to scale their personal brand as their business expands, right? I'm really looking forward to learning from both of you on this, and how can they avoid these? Because I'm kind of dealing with this in just my own stuff that I'm doing on the side. You know, it's like everything's getting automated now, and there's so many tools that can help you with your brand, and you got to be careful, right? Because you don't want to lose your authenticity and sort of what you've already created. So would love to hear from you about some common pitfalls and what we can do to avoid those.
I'm glad to start. I think it's more important, and this is, you know, reflection on my own journey. I think it's more important to put out less frequent stuff, but more genuine stuff. That's what I believe. I think the more frequent stuff is about to become really damn noisy. It already is, but AI is going to make it stupid. And we're all going to be able to tell, right? We're all going to be able to tell what is AI generated or just social posting. And, you know, I think Andy said filling the airwaves. I think we're all going to tune that out. I really truly believe that. And so we're going to tune into the things that seem really genuine and heartfelt. And so, you know, what's our realistic ability to do that? I don't know. me maybe every 2 weeks. But if I do that every 2 weeks, there's a lot of things I can share, and I can build my credibility with my network and my connections that really matter. Am I going to max out my number of connections? No, maybe not. I don't know. But I think that I think that there's always a cause and effect. So when things start to empower something new, it's really cool for a while, and then it drops off, right? Like it was really weird when GPT came out that I had people that used to text me in like, caveman terms, 3 or 4 words, and suddenly they're sending me 2-page documents. I'm like, okay, come on, man. I know that's not you. So I just think that our ability as humans to decipher the difference between people who are genuine is actually the one thing the AI is going to have a hard time deciphering, at least for the next couple of years. And so I just think that we have to lean into being true and honest. So my personal brand is going to go back to, I don't know if it's once every 2 weeks or once a week or once a month, but I'd rather put out really genuine stuff from me personally. But the company put out the normal stuff. But me personally, I need to be writing stuff from the heart and engaging genuinely.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much. Andy, I'd love to hear from you too on this one.
Yeah, it's an exercise. Like I saw someone, ironically, maybe not so, post something on LinkedIn the other day, and it really got me thinking. And it was a guy, Andrew Young, who's an amazing community guy, networker, based here in New York. And he had this chart, which was like, it was 1 through 10, where there was different types of friendships, where number 1 was someone you're connected with socially on social media. So like a social media, LinkedIn, etc., but you don't know them, right through to number 10, who was someone that you can call and like they would drop everything and come and help you no matter what it was. And that's like your inner circle. And as an exercise, be able to sketch out that network. And the reason that I raise that is because I think that as your profile grows, as your company grows, it's important to retain that sort of active connection that you have. But I think the thing that defines you are the things you say no to. So not feeling like that you have to do everything, be on every channel, turn up to every event, because it can become overwhelming. Like the startup journey is already time consuming. So to finish that off, so being able to, the things you say, to recap, the thing you say no to and what you focus on are the people where you're actually contributing to the industry that you're working in and helping people and being genuine and always retaining that. And I think it's easy to dilute yourself in a way where you lose focus on the business, on your team, on the culture. So I'd suggest that like choose the things that are important, say yes to things that will make a difference. Don't feel obliged. Saying no is not disrespectful. It actually helps keep you sane and retain who you are.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I know this isn't the topic, but since we are dovetailing into mental health, I would just say it's really easy as a founder to make your entire world surrounded by people who are stakeholders in what you're doing. Like every single person that you love and care and cares about you ends up becoming an investor or working with you or whatever. Like that's really normal. I think it's really important as a multi-time founder to cultivate people who are outside of that circle, right? And 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever your answer is, but people you can sit down with and just vent. Because if you don't feel like you can do that as a leader, you don't have an outlet, right? And I've gotten that spot multiple times, and I know this lesson well. And so I've been trying to cultivate more of my external circle in the last year. Um, People aren't going to judge. People aren't going to react as an investor or as an employee. If you just say, I'm freaked out about this, or I don't know how to solve this problem, like, where do you go? You can't always do that with your inner circle, right? And I just think it's really important to cultivate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. This was such an insightful discussion, right? And so thank you both, Mark and Andy, for your incredible expertise on how founders can scale, build, and differentiate. And so I think, in just quick summary of what we've heard, I think one of the biggest mistakes is trying to appeal to everyone, right? And making sure that you're taking care of your mental health, just like Mark just said. So to everyone watching, I hope you're walking away with some valuable strategies that can help you in sort of deciding which direction you want to go with your personal brand. And to remember, personal brand is a journey, right? So take the first steps so that you can build that trust, gain that credibility, and hopefully some of the things we've shared are going to be helpful to you. So let's continue to build our personal brands that are going to, represent who we are, but also drive meaningful impact in our communities and industries, right? So thank you for joining today's session, everybody. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to stay tuned in for our next session next Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then if you've missed any of our prior sessions, please check out our YouTube channel at Nobody Crowd for all of our sessions that have been previously done. All right, everyone, have a great week.